3 lines on Instagram just ended up highlighting Indiana Fever's toughest choice this offseason. Sophie Cunningham shared an old clip with Caitlin Clark from last year. Just the two of them enjoying a moment on the floor. Nothing. Over-the-top nothing staged, just two teammates with obvious chemistry. Then Caitlin replied, "Time to run it back." That's all. 3 short words. But with free agency paused, CBA talks stuck, and expansion drafts hanging over the league, those words may have turned into a nightmare for the Fever front office. Because here's what most people are ignoring. Indiana may not even be able to protect Sophie Cunningham when Portland and Toronto enter the league through the expansion draft. And if they lose her, they lose the only player in the league who consistently defended Caitlin Clark on the court last season. Sophie's response said even more. She joked about cuddling and having dinner twice a week. Clearly playful teammate energy. But what's not funny is how this public interaction just put huge pressure on Indiana's decision-makers. Caitlin Clark, the player responsible for record crowds and TV numbers, the generational star who revived the franchise, basically told everyone she wants Sophie back. And now the Fever might have to decide between keeping Sophie or protecting other players they rank higher. If you think front offices should pay attention when their franchise player points out who she wants beside her, hit the like button right now. That shows you get what's really happening behind the social media posts. Let's clear up some noise because the comments under that Instagram post were exhausting. Someone seriously asked if Caitlin Clark was cheating on her boyfriend Connor just because 2 teammates joked around. That's the circus around every Caitlin Clark story. 2 friends having normal playful banter, and suddenly people try to create drama that has nothing to do with basketball. Caitlin is in a committed relationship with Connor McCaffrey. Sophie is straight. They are friends and former teammates. Can we please focus on the real basketball problem here, because it's very real? The expansion draft is coming. Portland and Toronto are joining the WNBA, and current teams must expose players for selection. Usually teams can only protect 5 or 6 players total. That's it. Indiana has 4 guaranteed locks. Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, and Elisa Smith. Those 4 will be protected no matter what. That leaves maybe 1 or 2 spots for the rest of the roster. And this is where it gets tricky. Both Sophie Cunningham and Kelsey Mitchell are unrestricted free agents who have said they want to stay in Indiana. The positive part is the Fever should have enough money to bring both back once free agency opens. But if they sign both before the expansion draft, they must protect both. That uses up their remaining slots and leaves other important players exposed. So what if Indiana decides they cannot use a protection slot on Sophie Cunningham? What if they believe Kelsey Mitchell's 17 points per game are more important than Sophie's toughness and off-court presence? Then Sophie is available in the expansion draft. And the second she is available, Portland or Toronto takes her likely very early, maybe even first. Here's why. Sophie Cunningham was the second most searched female athlete in America in 2024. Not second in the WNBA, second across all women's sports according to Google year-end data. She hosts a podcast on the Volume Network with Colin Cowherd. She appears regularly on major media outlets. She built a real fan base far beyond basketball. And here's the scary part for Indiana. She did all of that in just 1 season with the Fever. Think about that. 1 year next to Caitlin Clark. And she became the second most searched female athlete in the country. That's not just about Sophie's personality. That's about the platform that comes from playing with the league's biggest star. She went from a rotation player in Phoenix to a household name in a single year. That's the Caitlin Clark effect. Now Indiana might lose her because they are more focused on protecting players with better stats. But numbers don't show everything. Watch last season again. Every time Caitlin Clark was hit or knocked down, who consistently stepped up? Physically, Sophie Cunningham. She was the only one who actually confronted opponents and protected Clark in real time on the court. Indiana had players who scored more and rebounded more than Sophie, but they didn't have anyone else willing to physically stand up for their franchise player when things got ugly. In a league where Caitlin Clark will continue to be targeted by opponents who resent her attention, having someone ready to defend her matters. That type of culture never shows up in box scores or advanced metrics, but it matters in the locker room and during games. Caitlin Clark knows it matters. That's why she replied with, "Time to run it back." She wasn't just being nice. She was sending a message to the front office about what she values in a teammate. So now Indiana faces an impossible choice. Do they protect Sophie, knowing an expansion team will absolutely select her if she's exposed? Or do they protect players they believe are more valuable statistically and risk losing the one their franchise star clearly wants? Share your honest opinion in the comments. Should Indiana protect Sophie Cunningham even if it costs them someone else? Because this decision will define their entire offseason, and there is no obvious right answer. Now let's talk about Kelsey Mitchell. She's a huge part of this. She averaged 17 points per game last season and has been Indiana's most reliable scorer for years. From a pure basketball view, she's the priority. If you're choosing based on numbers, Mitchell wins easily. But here's where it gets complicated. If Indiana can only protect one of their free agents, the basketball choice and the business choice may not line up. Mitchell is the better scorer, no debate. But losing Cunningham might hurt more, because what she brings is harder to replace. She brings media attention that helps ticket sales and ratings. She brings fan engagement through podcasts and social platforms. She brings defensive toughness and a willingness to protect Caitlin Clark physically. And she brings natural chemistry with Clark that was obvious all season. Those things don't show in stats, but they matter. When building around a generational star, the timing makes it worse. Free agency cannot begin until the CBA is finalized and talks are stalled over revenue and salary structure. No one knows when it ends. It could be soon or it could drag out. When it finally does, everything will happen fast. Free agency, then expansion. Draft prep immediately after. Indiana cannot wait and see. They must make quick decisions about who matters most. That Instagram exchange forced this discussion into public view, and now the front office has to acknowledge what their franchise player wants. Here's another concern. What if Sophie goes to Portland or Toronto and becomes a star there? She's 28, entering her prime, and already proven she can draw attention. Give her a featured role on a new team building its identity, and she could thrive. Maybe not a 20-point scorer, but a fan favorite who sells jerseys and energizes a new market. That is extremely valuable for an expansion franchise. If Indiana lets her go for nothing or loses her because they didn't protect her, that mistake could follow them for years. Imagine watching Sophie become the face of Portland, doing media, building fans, while Indiana explains to Caitlin Clark and their fan base why they chose someone else. That's a PR disaster, especially when your star publicly asked for her return. The counterpoint is simple. You cannot build a team on feelings and social buzz alone. Winning games matters. Mitchell is the better scorer. Lexi Hull developed. Nalissa Smith has star potential. If protecting Sophie means exposing one of them, maybe that's not smart basketball. But the WNBA has changed. The line between basketball value and entertainment value is blurrier than ever. The league just signed a huge TV deal because Caitlin Clark drove record ratings. In this environment, a player like Sophie Cunningham has more value than stats show. Casual fans recognize her and want to watch her. That matters now more than it did years ago. Look at what Sophie actually gave Indiana last season. The Fever went from the lottery to the playoffs. Caitlin Clark helped. Aaliyah Boston helped. But veterans like Sophie mattered too. She played without needing attention. She took charges, hit open threes, defended bigger players, and brought energy off the bench. She did the dirty work winning teams need. Now Indiana must choose between good options with no perfect answer. They can sign both, protect both, and lose someone else. They can prioritize Mitchell and risk Sophie leaving. Or they can make the bold move and secure Sophie because of her off-court impact and chemistry with Clark. What we know is clear. Caitlin Clark wants Sophie back. The fans want her back. Sophie wants to stay. The question is whether the front office values what she brings enough to make it happen. Because if they let her go and she thrives elsewhere, they better be right about who they chose instead. That kind of mistake lasts years, especially when your franchise player asked and was ignored. If you want to follow how this expansion draft plays out and whether Indiana listens to Caitlin Clark, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. This is the biggest offseason in franchise history, and we're covering every angle. See you in the next one.